Join Edwin Frondozo on the Business Leadership Podcast every week for a unique program featuring insights and actionable items from the world's most successful business leaders. Hear firsthand the exclusive interviews and personal journeys on how today's transformational leaders made it to the top.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining me on the Business Leadership Podcast. I am Edwin Frondozo, and this is episode number 46 with Alexander Peh. I was really thrilled to have Alex join me on the podcast to share his journey, which took him literally around the world before he landed as the VP of Innovation at RBC. Alex and I actually met a couple of years ago at a startup event that was put on through Startup Canada. At the time, he was at PayPal, so I was really excited to sit down with him to see what he's been up to. Before jumping in, I'd like to give a shout out to my media partners, IT World Canada and Startup Canada, for the ongoing support of the podcast. Now enjoy the show. Welcome to the Business Leadership Podcast, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is a somewhat surreal experience. I feel like I'm somewhat important for a minute.
Well, hey, you and I have history, and I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to spend some time with you and really just get some leadership, hearing your journey and your experience. But Alex, why don't we just start off by telling the listeners something about you, who you are outside of the workplace when you're not growing, leading businesses.
Who am I? I am a new dad. I have a 3.5-week-old little baby boy, Sonny. So I'm greatly enjoying that kind of dad life. I'm very, very kind of passionate about the entrepreneurial and startup ecosystem. I spend a lot of my personal time and professional time working with kind of entrepreneurs and trying to provide some feedback and guidance, especially from an international angle. And it's funny you ask a little bit more about myself. I'm somewhat of an itinerant, and I say I'm somewhat of an itinerant. I get a little bit confused who or what I am. I have a relatively thick Australian accent, and I am Australian, but only by naturalization. So everyone always asks me about my Australian mum or dad. No, my dad's Chinese, my mother's English. So I was born and raised in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I went to high school and university in Melbourne, in Australia. And I've had a chance to live around the world since then. So in Africa, back in Asia, in Europe, and North America. I get confused, with the holidays. I get confused with the celebrations. So I quite enjoy these coming into the kind of like non-denominational holiday seasons.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And we'll get a little more into this experience of being worldwide, and it's amazing to have that for you. But let's just start off with your current role here at RBC. If you could tell everyone what you're doing and perhaps what you're trying to accomplish over the next, let's say, 12 months.
So, as part of innovation and the innovation organization inside of technology and operations here at RBC, our mandate is to effectively be agents of change and transformation. And we very much view technology and innovation as transformative. I think it's always glass half full, glass half empty. People want to talk about disruption. We much prefer to talk about transformation, and we believe that these technologies can be transformative. So our mandate is to kind of drive innovation through very kind of efficient and effective experimentation. To do it through some fantastic partnerships. Always looking at a lens of kind of next generation technology. And probably more so than I thought, and I'm really excited about this, about trying to build that knowledge and capability internally and then really spreading that knowledge and capability across the business. So, anyone who's listening to this who doesn't know RBC, we are very proudly Canada's largest bank. We have a 150 plus year history. And when we look at it, we are someone who are very proud and very passionate to be serving the Canadian communities.
No, that's great. And tell us a little more about, the organization you're in, because I know you're fairly new.
Yes.
to this, and it's within the innovation. So are you working primarily with internal, outside partnerships to push this innovation type of agenda?
So RBC has four verticals, and there are four reporting businesses, and technology and operations where we sit is a horizontal. Mm-hmm. So every one of our around 30 lines of business is a stakeholder to myself and the organization. And we love that because we can wake up in the morning and we can be looking at innovative projects for insurance, for asset management, for human resources, for collections. People always want to think about the kind of the bank, so our personal and commercial bank. But there's actually lots of really interesting and exciting opportunities across the business. And one thing that I'm really excited about is we have a huge amount of passionate, engaged innovators at RBC. I think people have heard, anyone who's met me has probably heard me say this. Whether it was ignorance, whether it was arrogance, when I joined RBC about 3 months ago, I really was thinking I was going to have to unearth talent and unearth this innovation. And what has absolutely shocked me is how many smart, passionate, engaged innovators this business has. And I genuinely mean that across, like I said, 30 plus lines of business. And so when we think about the opportunity, we really try to imagine the possibilities.
And that's really refreshing. I mean, probably that perception of a bank is not only new to you or special to you. It may be someone from myself who's sitting on the outside in, and hearing that coming from you who's just new to the organization and really finding that talent's here and that passion for innovation is great. It
absolutely is, and I say to people, I've been here kind of like 3.5 months or so. So maybe I still do have a certain element of the rose tinted glasses on, but it's exciting to see the momentum that 80 plus thousand people can have. And something certainly that I enjoyed greatly in my previous career at PayPal, and I certainly enjoy it here at RBC and look forward to it, is the ability to make an impact, and to make an impact at scale is something that I think is it's intoxicating, but it really helps you kind of validate, why we're here and why we spend so much time and energy doing the things we do, really, to really make an impact.
So Alex, looking at your career, I mean, and you just mentioned it, you are still figuring out, you started in Malaysia,
yep,
to Australia. I mean, you literally been worldwide, and now you're here in Toronto. So can you share with us, the listeners, some key turning points within your career that perhaps opportunities or challenges that made you have a decision that made you that business leader you are today?
I can think of probably three events in my life that have helped shape it, and a couple of people who have really helped me shape what I'm very proud of my career. I still think I've got a long way to go. But when I think about it from an event standpoint, when I kind of finished high school, I just assumed I would go down the very, very standard path of I did a business degree, and I thought, great, that's what my parents want me to be. All of my family are in professional services at EY, Deloitte, etc. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are accountants and financial planners. So I thought that's what I'm going to be. And the reality is I finished university and I very quickly realized that's not what I wanted to do. Right. And I mean that in the most respectful way to those professionals, but it was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
And so I actually spent, a good couple of years, honestly, soul searching. And my parents were probably a little bit concerned that again, maybe I was going to be the black sheep of the family. My mother has done quite a lot of real estate speculation. So I thought maybe real estate and real estate development was something that would be interesting me. I thought that there was a lot of kind of like synergies with my enjoyment in talking to people. I thought maybe I'd just have a career in sales and do things like that. But that for me was one of these kind of like first points in my life where I realized that for no matter how much we plan, and, I'd been planning to do a business degree and work in kind of like finance since I was about 12 or 13 years old, that wasn't going to be kind of pan out the way it could have.
Yeah.
I look at the kind of like second part was probably in my mid-20s or so, and I got to sit down with my cousin, who is an incredibly successful businessman and entrepreneur now as well. He runs a private equity and venture fund out of New York. And he sat down with me, and again, I felt a little bit transient. And he really talked to me about trying to combine things that I was very good at with something I was very passionate about. And I've always been very, very passionate in technology, and more so than anything was consumer electronics at the time.
Right.
I was just like, I love this technology. I think it's going to transform our lives, etc. I really enjoy interacting with people, working with people. And so he kind of talked about marrying those two. And if you do something that you're really good at, and you're working on something that you're really passionate about, then his kind of view was it's not really work. In that case, you're kind of getting paid to do what you wanted to do. And that was that second point where I decided, you know what, I was really going to focus on technology. And I started out working in technology, looking to transform the media industry. And we were talking back, 2004 or 5 or so, somewhere around that. The concept of watching content on a mobile device was just unheard of.
Right.
The concept of video demand or streaming, etc., was just completely and utterly unheard of. And that was kind of like super exciting. And the kind of third moment for me was when I literally just picked up and decided that I was going to quit a job that I enjoyed and was what I'd like to think I was reasonably successful of. And I was just going to take some time off, and I took almost a year off to decide what I wanted to do next. And I was very privileged and lucky that I spent some time traveling around, and I met a bunch of people. And I just decided that I was gonna sell up my home in Australia. I was I just quit my job, and I was gonna move to London, and I was gonna work in kind of like mobile development and mobile app development. And that was just game changing for me. To a certain degree, I knew next to nothing about any of these things, but it was just something that I was super excited and super passionate about. And that set me on, over the last 10 years or so, hopefully a path of success. But I'll tell you this right now, it was also incredibly a massive reality check to go from a relatively kind of like small town Australia to London in the UK.
Yeah.
And realize that talent and competition and skills, it's fierce.
It's crazy. And man, I really thank you for sharing. I really love that story. And you had these 3, I guess, points in your life where it gave you a mind shift. One started in high school, one mid-20s, and I'm almost going to assume that when you took this sabbatical, I would call it, yep. Were you late 20s, early 30s?
I was late 20s, early 30s when I kind of took that sabbatical, and quite frankly, I'm probably not far off taking another one of those sabbaticals where I decide what the next kind of phase.
Yeah.
It's something I've got the absolute pleasure of leading a great team here at RBC. And I think managing people, honestly, is one of the great privileges of working in an organization, especially a large organization like RBC. Mm-hmm. Being able to develop and shape and support and challenge talent as they grow, I think it's one of the most exciting things going around. But I talked to my co-ops here at RBC, and when I was growing up, it was all about this kind of like 10-year plan. It's like, what's your 10-year plan?
Yeah.
Like now I look at it and I think about everything in kind of like maybe 2 or 3 year chunks.
Oh yeah.
That we move at such an incredible pace. Things change, transform, innovate at such incredible momentum now that quite frankly, anyone who's thinking that they're, what they're going to be working on in 2027 or 2028, it's going to be wildly different, planning versus kind of reality. So thinking about things now in these kind of 2 to 3 year chunks, maybe 5 years if it at best, that probably leads me to think that I'm not far off one of those sabbaticals again.
No, for sure. And time is going crazy fast. I mean, you talk about 10 years. You have a young child. Imagine what the world looks like when he's 10.
But again, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
Right? There's lots of incredible technology, and we can talk about them until the cows come home. But if I think about 10 years ago, the concept of autonomous vehicles. In 10 years, we will have autonomous vehicles. I'm not going to say that everyone will have adopted them. But you look at what Tesla's been doing, you look at what Volvo's been doing, etc. I was just in Tel Aviv recently, and I can assure you right now, the autonomous vehicle and LiDAR technology coming out of Israel is unbelievable. So, I mean, I look at it now and I think that my little boy I'm excited. I think when I was growing up, maybe with my generation, it certainly wasn't my parents' generation. It certainly wasn't my grandparents' generation. I remember my mum and dad kind of talking to me about the fact that I could do anything I wanted. And I think later on now in my life, I believe I literally could do anything I want. But I look at the next generation. I look at my son, and I genuinely believe that this generation have the ability to do anything they want, right? That excites me, but it also scares me, because one of the biggest blockers I see, and it's something that I'd love to, let's say, talk about, is we probably have too many options. I think we're a generation now where people finish school or people finish university or they quit a job and they have 17 different, they have the world's their oysters. And that's made us quite naturally, indecisive, right? There is no fight or flight for us, right? Because we don't need to fight and we don't need to flight.
I want to just change gears a bit, because you and I could probably talk about technology forever, and you said it. But now that you've been in RBC over 3 months now, and throughout your career, you switch roles, you switch organizations, and obviously you get new responsibilities, new team members. I'd like to get some of your thoughts or insights in terms of how you adjust and continually grow, switching organizations and becoming a more effective business leader.
Look, I think the reality is that when I speak to people, for me as an individual, I look less to let's say the brand, and people can look at it in a couple of ways. You can say, I always dreamed of working for company X, because, I idolize them. I'm a fanboy or a fangirl, and those companies quite often are Google and Facebook and Apple, etc. And people are willing to take any role or job inside there to achieve that goal. And I've had parts of my career where I've been, and again, there's no right or wrong to that, but there's definitely been parts of my career where I've been caught kind of just dreaming of working for organizations like this. Probably for most of my career, I've been more focused on the opposite side, which is less about the brand and more about the specific role in the team that I'm working with. Mm-hmm. So when I think about RBC, a lot of people have shown or expressed certain elements of surprise that I joined RBC Royal Bank. And I tell people, I had the opportunity to sit down with my manager, a gentleman called Martin Weilberger, who's the executive vice president of innovation and technology here. And he's a genuine human being who wants to see change. He's passionate. He's engaged. His boss, so my boss's boss, is a gentleman called Bruce Ross, who looks after the technology and operations group, which is around 12,000 people or so. He's another individual. He's just a human. Right. He's got a family, but he's excited. He's curious. He's energetic. He's passionate about kind of innovation and change. So I look at it, and for me, I think it's more about focusing on finding a team and a business unit and peers and a leader who you believe in, who you feel are going to support you and challenge you and help you grow, as an individual self, rather than going and finding that particular company. Mm-hmm, right. Mm-hmm. Like, and again, I think that there's two things when I think about my own career. Do you want to focus on, an industry, or do you want to focus on a skill set? Right. So you'll have a lot of career bankers who will have focused on the industry, so working in financial services, and they will have jumped around from human resources to accounts to product, etc. But the one constant is the industry. Mm-hmm. You have the other view of it. Are you focusing on a particular skill set or a job type, and you're then going from industry to industry? And I'd probably be sat more on that side, where I was always very passionate about technologies, but I'm not a coder. Right. I wish that I'd done a double, which I'm seeing so many people doing now, but quite frankly, that wasn't available to me, when I was growing up. But I look at it, for me, I've spent more of my career, focusing on specific type of job types and skill sets that are easily replicatable, across, businesses. Right. So working for, let's say, a FinTech at PayPal, what I've been able to do there and bring over to a financial services company like RBC is great. If I decide that I want to take that and then work for a pure play technology company, I feel that I hope that I've built that skill set
Right.
and that experience that I can take that across. No one looks at Alex Peh and says, "Wow, that's a career banker," because I'm not. No one says, "Oh, wow, and looks at my CV and says, "Oh, wow, that's Alex Peh. He's a career technology." Haven't always been in there, right? But when I think about it, I think that people certainly, when they're at certain parts of their career, because again, things change, they've kind of got to decide what they want to do. Are they focusing on that industry or vertical, or are they focusing on that job type?
When I was reading up and doing my research on you, Alex, Google and LinkedIn, actually, I found out at PayPal that you drove initiatives like presenting sponsorships at Beta Kids CanCon podcast, as well as DX3 Startup Zone, which gave the startups exposure to over 4,500 people and a chance to pitch to retail heavyweights. So I'd like for you to share how you decide to lead initiatives like this.
The single greatest kind of pleasure and privilege I probably had at PayPal, again, was actually working with entrepreneurs and small businesses in somewhere like Canada. Right. And so when I look at their involvement with the CanCon podcast, so shout out to Douglas and the team at BetaKit. I know big fans of what you're doing. And when I look at what DX3 and the organization and group they're trying to do, they're both very proud organizations trying to help and endorse and evangelize and advocate for kind of entrepreneurship. So, when I think about an organization like PayPal, and the same here at RBC, when we are able to get behind the community and get behind the ecosystem, that's one of the great benefits of working for these large enterprise organizations. Here at RBC, we're able to support the Creative Destructive Labs here in Toronto. We work with the Vector Institute. We work with OnRamp, and that was one of the most exciting things for me was I think it was my second week. I hadn't even necessarily had a chance to meet all of my own team.
Yeah.
And I got to open the OnRamp Entrepreneurship Hub at the University of Toronto alongside the Dean of UFT and Dave Mackay, the President and CEO of RBC. So, I was telling my parents, they're like, "What's the team like?" And I'm like, "Great, haven't met all of them, but I did cut a ribbon today with the President and CEO of RBC." So that was pretty good fun. But again, I look at that and I look at what we as an enterprise organization are able to do and advocate for, these technologies, like AI, like machine learning. That's great. But the reality is it's also good for our business. This was something that a lot of people said to me at PayPal, love what you and the team are doing to support and advocate for entrepreneurship. Absolutely, 100% we believe in that. But also, let's be very, very clear, that also helps that business. Right, the more entrepreneurs who start businesses in Canada are naturally going to take that online, and when they take that online, they're going to hopefully transact online, and at that stage, they're going to use a fantastic product or service like PayPal. Right, so it's not about being kind of martyrs. It's not about being altruistic. If you can find synergies between helping the community and helping the ecosystem that also is going to benefit your business, that's a match made in heaven, right? So, as sometimes I thought we probably had, and certainly myself have been given far too much credit over the years, for doing it. But again, being able to leverage a brand like RBC or leverage a brand like PayPal to help the community, help the ecosystem, help entrepreneurs, again, that's one of the great things that we get to do.
So, Alex, who do you look to when you're looking for support or leadership mentorship?
That's kind of like a tough one, right? And when Edwin reached out and we're having a chat about this, you want to like prep all this stuff and go, let me tell you about these incredible business leaders around the world that no one else has ever heard of.
Yeah.
Right. And I look to my mum and my dad quite a lot. Both of them have been entrepreneurs. Quite frankly, neither one of them necessarily that successful. I look to my cousin, as I mentioned before. He's somewhat of an older brother to me, and quite frankly, if I could reach anywhere near the levels of success that he's had over the years, I'd be very, very kind of proud. I also have been lucky that, and I mentioned it before. I've probably had three career events that have helped shape. I probably had three managers or leaders in my life who have really kind of helped shape that. And I'm very proud of the fact that there are actually like 3 female leaders. And they hate the fact when I talk about them, but they don't really have a choice because I got a microphone, and they don't. But, there was a lovely lady called Belinda Keating, and Belinda was probably the first, leader to take a chance on me. I was very early on in my career, very early on in my 20s, and we knew mutual kind of friends. We got to know each other, and she was someone who was willing to take a chance on me, and gave me a job working in kind of like media and technology.
Right.
The second leader that I still spend a huge amount of time with is a lady called Kylie Seaman, and Kylie was the first manager I had who really kind of taught me about business. Right. I spent a number of years at university learning a lot of textbook stuff, which didn't prepare me for the workplace. And I looked to Kylie as a leader and as a manager, and she spent far too much time. I probably monopolized her time a little bit, but she probably spent far too much of her time investing me as an individual and teaching me, humility, and teaching me what it was like. And again, the privilege and honor of managing people. And I still spend a huge amount of time with her. And I still would say that she's a great sounding board for me. And then finally, for now, finally, a lady called Beverly Riley, and Beverly was the first manager or leader I had at PayPal who really just kind of opened up the throttle. Right. It's something I spoke about, or I have spoken a little bit. When I joined PayPal, when we came down to sit down our first kind of year-end review, I was sitting there a little bit going, I don't know if this is a company for me. I think it's an amazing company doing really exciting things, but I didn't necessarily dream of working purely in payments. I joke about this all the time, right? I don't know any kind of like 10-year-old boy or girl who, if you say, what do you dream of doing? They say, I want to work for the world's largest online payment processor. Right. So people quite often would ask me how I ended up working at a company like PayPal. And I said, it certainly wasn't because as a child, I was dreaming of it. But I remember very distinctly sitting down at my kind of like first year-end review going, I don't know if this is right for me. I don't know if this is I'm adding value. And I was nervous, and I was like, how do I have this conversation? I sat down with my director at the time, and the funniest thing in the world came around. He kind of had the exact same view. He was like, Alex, we don't know if this is necessarily the right place for you. We don't know if you're necessarily adding any value. And it was like, wow, here I was thinking, oh, again, selfishly, this is all about me. And, we kind of decided that we were going to take the holiday season to really think about it, and I was going to come back in the new year, and they were going to come back in the new year, and kind of decide whether we want to take it forward. And a big part of what kind of helped me then build a very successful career at PayPal was Beverly became my new manager, and Bev really was willing to kind of empower me to do the right things. Right. To be very open, honest, and direct. And that mantra is a PayPal mantra of open, honest, direct. And that's something that I believe in heavily. There's a time and a place, but we should always be open, honest, and direct as we can be. And so Beverly, I think she probably unleashed me on the eBay and PayPal world. Yeah. And so those three leaders are people that I still am in contact with on a regular basis. They've all taken very different career paths, but I'm incredibly proud and will always be incredibly grateful of those 3 female leaders of taking a chance on me, spending time with me, and investing in me.
I was actually pretty curious to ask what you're reading right now, but then I just found out that you have a 3.5-week-old son. So my daughter's 18 months. So I remember back then I wasn't reading much actually. But what was the last book you probably read that you could share with us?
So I just finished reading, and genuinely, my apologies because it's sitting right there. I couldn't even remember the name. So it's the Phoenix Project, and it's a book focused around developer operations. And it's actually a really easy, quick read for anyone working kind of in the developer ops industry. When I joined RBC, I would be sitting around in these meetings and everyone would be talking about this and talking about that. And I'd be like, I don't know what they're referring to.
Yeah.
Right. And they literally were referring to this book, The Phoenix Project. And so I read it. It's only a couple of hundred pages. And suddenly when they were talking about factory this or engine that, I was like, oh, I get it. You're referring to the Phoenix Project, and I understand this. The Phoenix Project basically is the concept that software development is very similar to a factory, right? So, in the 1930s, etc., when you're building cars, it would come in here and you try to work out, where your bottlenecks are, what's the most kind of efficient, effective way of utilizing it. And so the Phoenix Project is very good, probably boring a lot of people. I am in the process of reading how I don't know how to say this. Sorry, as I looked at to PR and comms, how effed up is your management?
Yeah.
So please don't get angry at me for saying that, by Melissa and so sorry, everyone in the room's laughing at me now. But you did say open, honest, and direct. Yeah, it is open, honest, and direct. But myself and my senior management team are starting to read, that, because I think it's a really interesting take on how we as people managers and we as kind of like leaders can help drive and change the culture inside technology. So that's an interesting one that we're going to start reading over the holiday season break. And I think everyone, or I hope everyone has just finished reading Radical Candor. And Radical Candor was certainly a hot topic over the last 12 months or so. And what I found with Kim, and I don't say Kim like I know her because I don't know Kim, but what I found interesting for me was, she uses different words, but a lot of that radical candor is about being open, honest, and direct. Mm-hmm. And it talks about, one of the chapters in the books talks about her as a people leader. One of the things that she wasn't necessarily able to do, and she had developed over her career, was give that open, honest, direct feedback on what people were doing. And she had an employee who she wasn't able to give that hard feedback to, and eventually that employee got let go. And that employee got let go because, what he had been working on, the organization didn't care about. And she as a leader had failed because she had not been willing to give that feedback, and quite frankly, she had failed that employee. So those three books, two of them are very much focused on culture, mm-hmm. Which people are going to like or not like, and one very much focused on developer operations, which I don't know how many people are actually going to enjoy reading.
Interesting and fun question for me to ask, and depending on where you are or how you feel about this, I'd love to get your thoughts on, if I were to ask your team, your colleagues, peers, what's the best leadership quality you possess? What do you think, or maybe better rephrase it, what do you hope they would say?
That's a good one. What they would probably say is that I'm quite good at rallying the troops, and collaboration is certainly something that I've spent a lot of my career focusing on. Whether you work in the financial services industry, whether you work in the technology industry, whether you work in the healthcare, etc., right now we're still we're in the people business. Mm-hmm. Okay. Consensus, and we're not talking about blockchain consensus, but, consensus is really about getting, a bunch of parties to agree on something. Okay. And so much of it in my experience over the years, is really about those relationships, being able to build rapport with people, being able to know how to communicate with different groups. There are times when you need to educate. There are times when you need to put pressure on people. There are times when you need to ensure a decision gets made, and there's times when you need to keep people informed. So collaboration is certainly something that I hope that they would say. It's interesting. It's funny you asked that. My sister, who again, someone who I very much look up to, and has spent a big part of her career at Ernst & Young. Many, many years ago, she was telling me about a process at EY. When you, leave a role or when you leave the company, you effectively are trying to elicit feedback from your team in an anonymous way on, what you could have done better, what you're known for, etc. And, at first I was really excited. I was looking to leave an organization that I'd been there for 5 or 6 years. And this was that time in my late kind of 20s. And I was like, this is it. This is a great time for me to look for that feedback. And, as I sent this anonymous survey, out, it dawned on me that maybe I wasn't necessarily prepared for the feedback that I was going to get.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a big thing. And if you want to ask the hard questions, you better be prepared for the hard answers. Right. And there's definitely times, when you're not prepared for them. Mm-hmm. And so I literally had clicked, send, and this was the email days, people, in case you're wondering how old I am. This was an email. Although one of my first jobs, I literally was paid just to fax things.
Yeah.
One of my very first jobs, I was paid around $9 an hour to fax sales catalogs to companies around the world.
Wow. We could talk about that for hours soon.
Yep. And I thought maybe that was going to be my career highlight.
Yeah.
But as I clicked send on this survey out, I had a bunch of preconceived ideas on what people would come back with. Mm-hmm. What is Alex known for? Alex is a great salesman and leader who's very passionate. And I was thinking, some of the feedback's definitely going to be that I talk too much, that I'm very opinionated. And so, as I waited for the kind of feedback to come in, and when it did kind of come in, it's something that I'm very, very kind of proud of. The number one thing that came back from that group was that I always was willing to listen to what people had to say.
Very nice.
And I had no idea that's how people viewed me. None whatsoever. If you'd asked me to write the 100 things that people were going to respond with, would not have been on that list of 100 things. But overwhelmingly, in different words, people said that Alex has an open door policy. Alex takes the time to get to know me as an individual and get to know what excites me and what energizes me and what's passionate about me. And he's always got that open door policy, right? So I hope that my team here at RBC would say something like that, as well. But they'd probably also say right now that we're trying to be, agents of change and transformation. Right. When you come into the 8th floor here at the amazing RBC water park, you come out and you see our innovation space. We're very different. We as RBC understand that the future of banking and the future of our company needs to be reimagined, and we are working on that, and we're very proactive in that space. But I also think that we as technology and operations, should be evangelists, should be advocates for innovation. So, it's one of those things, and it's not just Silicon Valley who get this kind of like title. There's some amazing companies in Canada who are trying to do this as well. But, I certainly would love to be known as someone who is trying to drive change and drive transformation. But it shouldn't be, we don't have to transform for the sake of transformation, right? So I would maybe, as much as a cop out as it would be, I very much like kind of terminology like efficient and effective.
Right.
Right. We should be efficiently and effectively looking at changing, looking at transforming, looking at innovating. So apart from being very loud and probably talking far too much, I would hope that they would talk about that kind of like collaboration, but also this kind of like agent of transformation and change.
We're going to have to end soon. But before we do so, I'd love to get some of your final thoughts, observations, ideally some type of actionable recommendations that you could share with any growing business leader, someone who's passionate or someone who's just looking for what to do.
I can't say this enough, right? People, whether you are a student, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a aspiring people leader or you're an existing leader, they should be leveraging some of these social media platforms. Right. You don't have to spend all day, every day on Twitter and LinkedIn, but, if you don't have a presence there, you're missing a trick, and I think that they're fantastic for career development. They're fantastic for getting your message out there. I mean, I spend quite a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I'm a big believer in that as a channel to distribute content, but also to have very real conversations as well. So, I think that we as senior leaders probably need to spend more time on there. It's not just a Silicon Valley thing, right? We all should be leveraging those. When I think about, let's say, early on in my career, taking advantage of co-ops and internships. I mean, I look at the 4 months of some of the co-ops that we have here at RBC, and genuinely, I'm incredibly proud. But just to caveat this, have had very little to do with that, so I can't take any of the glory. But I'm very, very proud to see how they've matured and developed and come out of their shells and challenged us over the last 4 months. So, if you're not taking these kind of co-op or intern opportunities, again, you're probably definitely kind of like missing a trick. One thing that I see certainly here in Canada is and again, I say this very blanket statement. We're probably a little bit too Canadian centric. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I think that there is some outstanding talent here. We probably don't have enough of an international or global view. We have such a strong immigrant population that we could be leveraging for different views and perspectives. I mean, I look at what China does around messaging, and we should be learning from that. I look at what South Asia, India, and Pakistan, and even Africa have been doing around mobile payments. They are world leaders. You look at Singapore and Hong Kong as being gateways to Asia there, right? So I think I would really like us to focus on trying to build more of an international view, but also very much taking advantage of this amazing opportunity where we have people coming in with very diverse views, opinions, and skill sets, and leveraging that.
So, Alex, to close, please tell us where we could find more information about you, the organization, and anything else you want to share.
I'm pretty easy to find because my last name's relatively unique. It was interesting. I always enjoy doing this. I was the only Peh at PayPal, and everyone very much enjoyed that joke of Alex Peh at PayPal. And in fact, when we found out that we were expecting a child, people wanted me, if we were having a little girl, people wanted us to name her Apple so she could be Apple Peh. True story. So you're going to find me on all the major kind of platforms. So if you come to LinkedIn, I'm just Alexander Peh. If you come to Twitter, I'm at Alexander Peh. You can find more about some of my own personal exploits and adventures at alexanderpeh.com. And at RBC, you're going to see us everywhere. Right. So, and if there's places where we should be, if there are organizations or community across Canada, where we're not supporting that, please reach out. That's one thing that I challenge my team with on a kind of weekly basis. We as the Royal Bank of Canada should be supporting as much of Canada as we can. I think we're incredibly strong and supportive here in the Greater Toronto region. But we want to be exploring talent in the Maritimes. We want to be supporting entrepreneurs in kind of like Saskatchewan and Alberta, etc. So we're very, very lucky to have this brand and this trust and this reach. We as leaders should be trying to do as much to help the ecosystem.
Well, that's great, Alex. Thank you for your time and joining us on the Business Leadership Podcast.
Thank you very much.
That's it, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Business Leadership Podcast, episode 46 with Alexander Peh from RBC. For more information about Alexander, RBC, or any of the books or resources that he mentioned, please head over to thebusinessleadership.com/046. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to the podcast. And if you are interested in learning more about the show, upcoming guests, or hear what I'm up to, please join our monthly newsletter where we will keep you in the loop. With that, have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon. Edwin signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Business Leadership Podcast at thebusinessleadership.com.